house in a 10 by 7 cell. It's astounding the lengths I'll go to convince the whole damn world I don't need anybody's help. Yeah, I am waving while I drown. Don't bother swimming out to save me, I will only drag you down. I'll try to use your body as a life raft, cause if there's room enough for one, there must be room enough for two. I'll sail the good ship you into the sunset, sipping on savory water till my liver turns blue. Sha-na-na, sha-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Is broadcast in the evening news. I will be relieved. La, 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 I am waving while I drown. Don't bother swimming out to save me, I will only drag you down. I'm waving while I drown. Don't bother swimming out to save me, I will only drag you down. La, 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 singing, hey, hey, alright, yeah, I wrote that one myself. It's astounding the lengths I'll go to convince the whole damn world I don't need anybody's help. Fuck.
All right, put down your pens, put down your pencils, step away from the keyboards and settle in for this week's episode of The Writer's Block. First and foremost, allow me to thank Don and Sally Ray for giving birth to me, because without them, none of this is possible. Also, allow me to thank Muddied Waters Media for allowing me to do this show. And as always, Grassroots Kava House, thank you for the kava that I drink on this and every single episode of The Writer's Block. To all above, Bula Vanaka. My guest today is Mr. Daniel Taxation is Theft Behrman. He is the host of Taxation is Theft podcast, and he is running for the Libertarian nomination for president in 2020. I don't know to call you Daniel or Mr. Behrman or Mr. Taxation is Theft.
I usually just go by Dan.
Okay, Dan. All right. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. How's it going?
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. I do appreciate you. I do appreciate you being here. I do appreciate you taking time out of your day, and I appreciate you wearing the hat.
Absolutely. Wouldn't be caught dead without it.
Right. So, I was actually watching one of your episodes today because I was trying to study up on you. And I like to wait to the last minute to cram. You know, that's how I got so far in high school and college, is to cram at the last minute. And, yeah, you put on a good show. I like it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I mean, well, it's kind of weird hearing that from someone who's not with the FBI. We've been watching what you've been posting on Facebook.
Yeah, we get those. We made a joke the other day that Spike has been on, I think it was Tuesday actually, Spike, my co-host of the Mighty Waters of Freedom. He has been on Facebook for 7 years as of Tuesday, and the joke is he's been in Facebook jail for 3.5 years of it. Today, I've been on Facebook for 12 years, and I think I've been in Facebook jail for 48 hours.
Yeah, I think I got a 3-day ban once. That was. Although I do have a permanent ban on running any ads from my main account, so I had to set up a sock account just for that.
Just to do ads?
And yeah, so way back in the day, I'm trying to think. I think this was in what, 2014 maybe, when I was running for Texas House.
Right.
I saw an article. It pissed me off. I shared it, and I was like, I could put so much profanity in this, but I'm just going to say, this is why not a damn thing ever changes. And I did a $5 boost. And I was banned for life from ever running an ad from that account. So I was like, well, I've got 2 email addresses. Let's see. And so that's how I run ads. it's insane, but that's how they roll.
Yeah, I mean that is how they roll. So I don't know how much you know about the Muddied Waters media and all of it, all the shows, but all of it started because of this stupid, disgusting drink called Kava that we drink. But I used to work in the Kava and kratom industry, and kratom.
That comes from. Does that come from Tonga?
Kava does come. Yeah, it will come from Tonga. It comes from Tonga.
I had some in Tonga.
Did you really?
I did. I was there.
This entire interview is about to change, by the way.
Awesome. Okay, so let me give you the backstory. The first job I ever had, I was a computer nerd, right? So I was always messing around with computers. And I don't know how exactly I found this job, but I started working for this woman who was like this scuba diver who went around the world scuba diving and taking pictures. And she opened up her little stock house in Santa Monica. And she was selling pictures, and this was like all on film, so it was all slides and everything. And she was one of these people who was like, "Yeah, we're not switching to digital. That's crap." Or maybe she was the one. I don't remember. But that's when that whole debate was going on. And so I was doing like some tech stuff. I was helping manage the database for that. And finally, like we were always talking about, yeah, you should come with us to go scuba diving and all this stuff. And it was all talk. And then finally, like 5 years after I stopped working for her, she called me up and said, "Hey, we're putting together a couple dives. One of them was in Costa Rica and one of them was in Tonga." So I got to go to both of those, and it was both of them. It was just kind of like we're sitting on a boat for like 5 days or so. And so I was out in the middle of Tonga, and we went to all these islands around there. And, you know, it was a lot of locals who were kind of, managing the ship, and they had Kava, and that was like, you know, kind of the entertainment for one of the night was to pass around the Kava, and we drank it and sat around playing music and all kinds of stuff. So it was pretty awesome.
So, okay. So traditionally, I love that I finally have somebody on that can talk about this stuff. This is amazing to me. So traditionally they do it in like a large wooden, like bowl kind of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, you know, where they dry it out and make it something like that. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. So it's traditionally served in like a shell, like like half of a gourd or half of a coconut shell or something like that. But did they mix it on the boat, or do you remember if they mixed it on the boat? Or
I don't remember. I don't remember them mixing it. And you know, like I said, this is a long time ago, so I'm remembering bits and pieces of it. I think we did have like little coconut cups that they were pouring it into that we were drinking out of. But I don't remember seeing them actually like prepare it. So who knows? But they were all native, so I'm sure they did it.
Right,
they did it the right way. It wasn't
the proper
like
way.
You know, yeah, it wasn't like this wasn't like, you know, a big like cruise line or anything that would have been like, okay, we got the McDonald's shake mix, just add water, like, which is, I mean, I guess that's kind of how you make it anyway. But
well, okay, so there's
more or less,
yeah, there's a little bit more that goes into it than that because
right.
It's not water soluble, so you can't just like mix it. All of it sinks to the bottom. There's like this whole process you have to do, and you have to strain it. It's more like a tea. And one of our regular listeners, Jacob LaBelle, calls it spit tea, and he is wrong. I mean, it tastes disgusting, but it's amazing stuff. No, that's amazing. I definitely know people who have gone and done like Kava ceremonies or gone to Tonga or Vanuatu or Fiji and like had Kava there, but I've never had somebody on my show that has done anything like that. And that's something I want to try before I die.
That's well, if you're into scuba diving, I can turn you on to the right people that'll go on that trip. It was really, that was actually this is another interesting story about that trip. Apparently, it's illegal to get in the water with humpback whales in just about everywhere in the world except for Tonga. I don't know if that's accurate, but that's a story I was told.
John McAfee must spend all of his time in Tonga.
Has he been in the water with one? Or did he take a selfie?
He's got this whole thing about trying to have sex with whales, so I'm assuming...
Ah, that's right. Was it a humpback, though?
I mean... What other kind of whale would you try to have sex with?
Yeah, right. Okay, fair point. But yeah, so that was awesome. We actually got to. I mean, you're not allowed to scuba dive with them, but we snorkeled with them.
That's cool.
And that was really awesome.
And you went to Costa Rica as well.
Yeah, and Costa Rica was, I call it Jurassic Park Island because I don't know if you like. I was a huge fan of that movie, so I remember like the island that took place was 300 miles off the coast of Costa Rica. That's where this island was. It was called Cocos Island,
Right.
and it was like a little reserve park, and supposedly there's like buried treasure all over the island from pirates and stuff from 500,000 years ago, and so you go diving there, and there's just sharks everywhere, but it was really awesome because they're small sharks. They don't attack people. That's kind of like, that was one of the things I learned working for this woman, because it was she was actually a very big advocate for I guess I'll say sharks' rights. There's this finning that goes on where they pull sharks out of the water and they cut their fins off and they just throw them back because all they want is the fins to make shark soup, or they say it's an aphrodisiac or something. So she was like, an activist against that. So her whole thing was like, yeah, sharks are actually really friendly and nice, except for maybe the great whites. And you can get in the water with them. And so we went diving with all these sharks everywhere. It was a totally like amazing experience. And we even did a night dive where, most of the time they were kind of out just chilling. Sometimes they were sleeping. But at night is when they get out and feed. So like we were out there, and basically the rule was don't go down to where they are. And I had a little flashlight and I'm pointing it down, and it was like an Indiana Jones, when, what was it? Which one was it? I think it was Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he's in the room and there's like a little hole in the ceiling with light coming down and there's all the snakes on the floor.
Yeah.
It was like that with my little flashlight on the ground, and just like sharks like swarming around looking. It was amazing.
That sounds awesome and terrifying at the exact same time.
It was, but I mean, I don't know. I guess I like to live dangerous. It was just an awesome experience though.
So was that in the Pacific coast or the Caribbean side?
That was the Pacific side.
Okay. I used to go down to Dominical on the Pacific coast, down there in southern, it's like down south of Capos a little bit. And I would go hang out down there for, like months at a time. And
nice.
That great time. But like we were talking before the show, I don't drink anymore. So I don't know what I would do in Costa Rica. People are like, go, there's so much to do and see. I'm like, right, but is there? Like, yeah, it's a rainforest. I've seen it. I've seen a monkey. Other than drinking and surfing, I don't really know what else there is to do down there. But yeah, I love Costa Rica. I would definitely go back if I had like a sober companion. I would definitely need like a sponsor with me to go back and hang out there.
Right.
Because there's a lot of things you can get in Costa Rica really easily that are really good that aren't exactly legal here in the U.S.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you know what I mean. So how is it that what was the path that you took to become a libertarian? Like, where was it that you started, and then one day you were like, I hate both parties, and I need a different outlet.
I think I was born with it.
Nice. Yeah.
It's I mean, like I've always been like very anti-authoritarian. Like, even my mom must have been like, I don't know how she dealt with me. Like, go, do your homework. Why should I? What's the purpose of this? What's going to happen if I don't? Like I would challenge everything. And so I didn't even really get into politics. Well, I used to watch a lot of like TV shows with my parents, like, which would be like Dennis Miller Live, shows like that, which were very like, I think they leaned pretty much Democrat. And so I was in California. So you look like, was he? Was he Republican?
I think Dennis Miller leaned more conservative, but I mean, that may have been later in his career.
I don't know. It was so long ago, but like, I just remember like, everything. I remember he would always criticize the system, just saying like, yeah, all these politicians are morons. And yes. I would always laugh at that and say, yeah, they're all morons, before I even know who they were or why. But yeah, like just in California, it was like everything was all Democrat. I was afraid of guns because, you know, we had Dare come to our school and tell us how dangerous. Don't treat a gun. What would they say? Like, even if you check it and it's unloaded, it's loaded. Like, it could just go, an unloaded gun can go off. Like, these are the ideas that I had in my head. And I don't know if they directly said it or if that was just my imagination from them being vague, but it was insane. And so I kind of sided with the Democrats from being out there. And I have a hard time admitting that I voted for Obama in '08. That was the first time I voted. And he broke my heart. And then it was like right after, like it was like a week after, because that was kind of right when I started paying attention to politics. I was into like investing in real estate, and like I wasn't doing it, but I was learning about it. I wanted to figure out how to make some money, right?
Right.
And so that's when the market started crashing. And it was like almost like a week after the elections where I saw somebody with a sticker on their car that said, "Who is Ron Paul?" And so I started looking into Ron Paul, and it was right around then that I was like, oh, shit, I should have voted for that guy. And then so I kind of became, after that is right around the time I moved to Texas and became a Texan. And I kind of became a Republican because of Ron Paul. And from there, I was like, okay, well, the Republicans kind of suck too. They were anti-marijuana. They seemed very xenophobic. There were, I don't want to say they were racist, but a lot of the racists seemed to be, from what I saw anyway in that group. I know there's a lot of them in both parties, but I was just like, and then I started listening to what their politicians were saying, and then I saw what they did to Ron Paul in 2012, and I was like, this whole thing is screwed up. So then I was like, man, screw this. And at that point, I was already researching the, especially because of Ron Paul, I was researching the income tax and the laws that, whether or not you have to pay income tax and all this. So yeah, I had been fighting that system. I had been driving without a license already for a couple of years. And I was like, man, these people there's got to be somebody who thinks like me. And I thought it was the Tea Party at first, just because I was like, yeah, it's named after the Boston Tea Party. That's got to be them, right? But nope,
no,
wasn't really
God,
them.
no. I had so much hope for the Tea Party. I had so much hope for the Tea Party when they first came out, and then they just crapped the bed so quick. Yeah, they were infiltrated, and it's the same thing that I think a lot of people are trying to do with the Libertarian Party, right?
But yeah, it's. And this is one thing I keep giving the Libertarian Party shit for the whole time is you didn't find me. I had to find you, and you were hiding under a fucking rock. Like, you should have been easier for me to find. What's going on here? But yeah, I met him in San Antonio, and, I worked with them a lot. That's when I ran for Texas House and continued working with them there. And then, I just kept like, something's not right here. I wanted to change it. So I kept, okay, I'm going to go to the national and like figure out this whole system. And I'm like, man, nobody's saying things the way I want them to be said. So I've got to come out here and I've got to build a brand. So I started with taxation is theft. And then I was like, okay, let's look at the presidential candidates. They all suck. I'm going to have to do that too. So, yeah.
All right.
It's an interesting story. That's the short version. Cause I could probably talk for, I'm going to have like a 24 episode miniseries to give you this story. To get the full story on how you became a libertarian. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Mine was a lot different. Mine was, I got arrested for, having marijuana on me when I was 19 years old. And I was like, well, that's stupid. Why can't I? And I have to wear my seatbelt? Why do I have to wear my seatbelt and why can't I smoke weed? And then after that, it was just downhill. Well, uphill, I guess. I don't know. It depends on which way you look at it.
It's every time like you see that stuff, it's like every single one of those little incidents kind of like gives you more energy to like want to fight the system because it's like, it's completely insane. I watched a video today of, it was like 2 or 3 cops in a hospital room searching. This guy just got diagnosed with cancer. He's lying in the hospital room, and they're searching for his marijuana capsules that are illegal in whatever state he was in. And and like his friends just trying to explain, look, he's gonna die soon. Are you seriously gonna fucking do this right now? Do you have a warrant? Do you have any? And they're just like, well, look, we haven't written a ticket yet, but if we find something, we're not going to arrest you. We're just going to give you a ticket. And it's like, what the? I mean, what? Shit. I would have said, I'm going to be dead in a month, so I'm not going to fucking pay it. So what's the point?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, you're really going to waste your time. You're going to waste the time of everybody in this room to write me a ticket when I'm dying. Okay. Whatever.
Yeah. But we're just doing our jobs. And it's like, yeah, but there are people out there who are raping and murdering. Why don't you go catch them?
Right. So let's talk a little bit about your I was about to say upcoming campaign, but I guess it's currently going on. So your current presidential campaign. I was talking before I got here to do the show. I was talking to some people, and I said, "Got a presidential candidate coming on my show," because I like to sound very important. I was like, "I've got a presidential candidate coming on my show," and immediately everybody said, "Bernie?" And I went, "Have you seen my show?" And they all said, "No." And I went, "He would not come on. I don't believe he would come on any."
Not if you paid him $50,000.
No, he would not. And I said, "No, it's this libertarian guy. His name's Dan Behrman. You should look him up." And they went, "Oh." And immediately, you got the typical questions of, why is the libertarian even going to run? Like, he doesn't have a chance, stuff like that. But somebody did ask, like, if he wins, who's going to build the roads? So I'm actually going to pose that question to you, because I think that all of the people out there who ask me that stupid question on a daily basis need to hear it.
Sure.
In a voluntary services versus free market services versus government services, who's building them?
So this is kind of like what I like to tell people, because I know believe me, I know it is in my gut to just tell them I don't give a fuck who builds it. That's like there are like the the hardcore anarchists that are just like that's a stupid question and you're an idiot for asking it. But the reality is, like, you don't get anywhere by saying that, and the reality is it actually is a very valid question. I don't want to be driving around on dirt roads,
right?
So it's really an interesting question. But what I like to tell people when they ask that is that's actually a really good question. And if we can first admit and understand that taxation is theft, right? Step one, admit you have a problem. Taxation is theft. We're stealing from people in order to fund this organization. If we can at least admit that's a problem, we can ask the question, which is what these people are now asking. How do we pay for it? And roads are kind of it's my short answer to all of that is always, look, I don't care how we pay for it as long as we don't do it by stealing. Let's come up with answers. If we use our brains and we're asking the question now, we can come up with answers. The reality is roads are diverse, right? It's like asking how long is a piece of string, right? It depends on the string. Right. What do you need it for? And so you look at different roads. If I'm building a new airport, right? Why am I building a new airport? Because I see a need for an airport. I know there are going to be airlines in there. And I'm going to build this so I can charge airlines to land their planes there because people want to go to this city. So I'm going to go to investors and I'm going to say, hey, I need all this money to build this airport. And I'm going to raise all this money and I'm going to build an airport. Now, what if there's no road to that airport, right? How am I going to get the machinery there to actually build it? All these questions. And, if I want that airport to be successful, I'm going to have to build the roads. And what happens now is that the builder of that airport would just go to the government and say, hey, we're going to bring new business to your city, so you should give us money and pay for this road for us.
Right.
When in reality, it's no, that's your business. You're going to be making money by having that airport there. The roads are probably the smallest cost in building that whole thing. You build the roads. And when you start thinking about it like that, it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. If there's a new mall or a new like super whatever, like a Walmart or a Costco or, one of these big stores, they're there to make money. Let them build. They're building the parking lots. A parking lot is basically just a big rectangular road, right?
Fair.
Let them build the roads.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
Yeah, so there are, interstate roads are different, city roads are different, community roads. They've all got different people who are interested in using them, and it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's going to be a toll road because why would if an airport is going to have a road to it, they're not going to charge people to get there, right? Because they're
depends on the airport.
It might depend on the airport, but the reality is, I mean, they kind of could do that now. Like they could charge you just to get in and drive around because, if you do that, you're not paying for parking. So,
right.
Which they are charging for. They're charging taxis to get in there. There's all kinds of different ways that they're making money. But the reality is, if other airports are not charging for that road, they're not going to, and they're just going to build it into the cost of, that they're charging the airports.
Yeah.
That they're charging the airlines.
So I could see I'm here in the Tampa area. So I could see Tampa not charging, but there's the smaller one, the St. Pete Clearwater one, where you've got the how do I put this delicately? The crap ass airlines like Allegiant that they fly out of there. I think I'm still banned from Allegiant actually.
I got to hear that story.
Yeah, I went on a Twitter rampage against Allegiant, and they blocked me from all of their social media. And I did this while I was waiting in line to get another ticket because they've screwed up my flight. Now I'm stuck in Chattanooga, Tennessee, or wherever I was. And so I did all of this, and they said when they handed me the ticket, they said after this flight you can't fly Allegiant anymore. And I went, okay. That's fair.
Man, I always wonder if they actually document that somewhere. Like, are you in a system? And do they have it by your name and passport number? Or somebody else with the same name is going to be like, what the fuck do you mean? What did I do?
What did I do? I didn't do anything. Yeah. And Matt Wright is actually a pretty common name. But yeah, so I could see somebody like them charging you to drive on the roads to get there, to do a toll road in order to get to St. Pete Clearwater.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point, but the reality is, if it becomes known that they're charging to do that, people are going to say, well, screw it, because usually, some people will go to an airport that's a little bit further away to save some money,
right?
But if they know there's a toll road to get there, then they're going to be like, well, screw that. I'm going to end it. I mean, it's the same thing people do now. They look at okay, well, this airline's cheaper, but I'm going to get nickel and dimed for everything. Just for the carry-on, I got to pay an extra $10 or that kind of stuff. People get to know that kind of stuff. So it's not in their best interest, but that doesn't mean that some people aren't going to try to do it. And hey, if that's what they want to do, that's fine. I guess.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's what if a private company wants to do it, go ahead, knock yourself out. I actually don't have a problem with Allegiant nickel and diming me for everything. The fact that I had to pay an extra, $50 for a carry-on or whatever it was. Or, if I wanted a seat that didn't feel like I was in third grade sitting in that plastic seat that's going to break out from underneath me, I had to pay an extra $20 or whatever. I don't mind that. I do mind that, they never get me anywhere on time, but okay, whatever.
That's every airline. I
right.
think.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. There was one day I was scrolling through my Facebook feed and 3 posts in a row was never give your money to United, never give your money to American, never give your money to Southwest. And I was like, you're really cutting us out of who we can fly, people.
Yeah. I have I'm trying to think if I should say it, and I've already posted it, so I might as well. American has done so many crappy things. I once missed my flight on a layover because the second flight left early. And so I have this note next to my frequent flyer. So whenever I'm booking, I go get my frequent flyer numbers, right? And next to American, it says, do not ever fly this airline. And I was booking a flight and I was like, why did I say that? Oh yeah, because they lost my bags when I went to the national convention and I had to wait for them. I didn't get them till the next day. Yeah. But I was like, but this is a direct flight. It's going to be different. And it was a direct flight and they still fucked up something. I don't know what it was, but I was like, man, I went back to my notes and I said, underneath, do not ever choose this airline. Underneath, I put, seriously, if the only option is American, just walk. So, Yeah, but I mean, yeah, it's every airline I've had issues with to some degree.
Yeah.
And
Do you remember a couple of years ago? Yeah, a couple of years ago, Delta, like, for lack of any other term, they shit the bed. Like, everything on Delta shut down, and we're talking days long delays. Okay, so like something happened at their hub. I don't know what, like some computer glitch. Everything in their hub shuts down, so they had to ground everything until they got it fixed. So it was causing like 10, 11, 12-hour delays on flights. And
Oh, wow.
like, of course, everybody was getting mad. I was flying that day on Delta, and I had to fly from Spokane, Washington, to Seattle, to Cincinnati, to Tampa. All of my flights being delayed. It's already going to be a long travel day anyway. Everything's getting delayed. The only saving grace about that was in Spokane, I bought some legal Washington weed and some edibles, which is...
At the airport?
No, not out, just outside of it.
Because that would have made it a better story.
Right. And I had to fly from Spokane to Seattle, so when they checked my bag, they didn't say anything because I was going to Seattle. And so the rest of that trip went by perfectly fine.
Nice.
I did not care even a little bit about all the delays. I think I showed up to the airport like 3.5 hours early and stuff like that. So would you consider yourself more of libertarian or anarchist or anarcho-capitalist, or where do you kind of rest on that?
I think that's an interesting question. Because I really hate labels.
Okay.
And I really hate trying to fit inside of a box. There are things that I totally agree with anarchists. I'd like to see the entire government go away.
Sure.
But at the same time, I can see the right of the government to exist through freedom of association, as long as the government is not stealing from people and violating their rights.
Right.
So, which, I've gotten into interesting debates with anarchists who say, well, that's not government. And I'm like, well, if there are 100 million statists who say, well, you're crazy for not wanting government, and we have government, but you say it's not government. You really want to argue with them, or are you really just going to let them have it?
Right.
That's kind of where that is. But I'm kind of a capitalist. Like, I like starting businesses and making money. So there's that. But I also see, with the a lot of the libertarian socialists I've talked to, most of the stuff that they say, I mean, there are the crazy ones who are like way off to the left, that are like eat the rich. Those guys I don't agree with, but unless they got rich by stealing, then I really would not come to their defense. But
the rent is theft crowd.
Yeah, and I actually heard an interesting argument for that. Actually, it wasn't even an argument for that. It was a different definition of the word rent, or rent seeking, I guess, which is where you artificially create where you have to rent, which is kind of like what government does with property tax. And I'm like, well, if that's what you call rent, then yeah, it is theft. But
yeah, okay. So if that's actually the definition that they're going by, I agree with that 100%. Right. Property taxes, theft.
But they should change it to rent seeking is theft. Like, because like anyone who hears rent is theft, like I was doing this for the first year. I was like, what do you mean rent? Like, if I own a property and I want to rent it to you, or if I own a car and I want to, like, that's what creates businesses, and what creates that's what creates Uber. You're renting a ride. Right. But yeah, it's those words. But at the same time, I can't really criticize them for using the words they want to use, because I, for a while, liked using the word anarchist, because I like saying it doesn't mean what you think it means. It doesn't mean chaos, it's actually in the dictionary as chaos now. But the original word it's a Greek word, which means anarchos, which is an is a prefix that means without, and archos means ruler. So all it means is without a ruler. It doesn't mean without rules. So that was always my defense of that. And it's like, you know what? People get too attached to like these words and what they mean. And I'm like, look, we got to kind of get away, because words are so ambiguous. Like, different people see different words and think they mean different things. And if you're if you're trying to have a conversation with somebody and your main obsession is trying to get them to understand one word that you're saying in the way that you understand that same word, then you're just going to fight with each other and you're never going to come to any kind of understanding.
Right.
So, and that's one of the reasons I hate labels, because what is a libertarian? You ask 5 different people, they'll tell you something different.
Right. And I mean, we've covered a good minute. You got just your basic old libertarians, and you got your libertarian socialists, and you got your anarcho-capitalists, and then you've got your anarchists, which aren't libertarians, but somehow libertarians have accepted them, but they're also like those guys are annoying, as Spike will definitely attest to. But yeah, so it's like there's so many different definitions of what a libertarian is that it's almost impossible. Like you say, "Oh, you're a libertarian, cool, me too," and then it's, but what kind are you? Because that's going to make a huge difference on how these conversations go. Are you one of the fake commie libertarians, or are you one of the I'm a Republican who smokes pot libertarians, or are you an actual, in my mind, a libertarian?
Yeah, and I mean, that question is always difficult for me to answer because I really can't say that I'm any of those. I mean, I have friends who are like the crazy anarchists, like diehard anarchists, and I'm, really good friends with them, and I love them, and they're awesome. And I'm friends with some other people who are libertarian socialists, and some people who are, all across the spectrum. I've got friends who are actually Democrats and Republicans, and I think that in itself is really important to say, and hearing their ideas, because when I hear their ideas, I'm listening for like, okay, what's your real need? And this kind of like, you were asking earlier about my free healthcare platform.
Right.
That came from talking to Democrats and understanding like, okay, they want free healthcare, like, but that's not really what they want. They just want healthcare. There's some guy that's out there with like this really bad haircut saying, hey, I'm going to give you free healthcare. And they're like, oh, that sounds great. That's going to solve my problem. So the free healthcare is really the solution that they want to solve their problem of not having healthcare. And so when you look at it like that, and it's like, okay, so you say what you want, but that's not really what you want. Let's actually have a conversation. Would you be happy with really, really cheap, affordable healthcare? And most of them are like, yeah, I'll be okay with that. And then I start talking about, well, if we get rid of all these restrictions that the government have on innovation in healthcare and drugs and everything, and I give them straight out comparisons. Look at the cost of drugs in this country compared to Mexico, or India, or all these other countries. It's not because they have laws forcing the prices down. It's because they don't have such a restrictive government. So all these manufacturers are competing for your business. And they're like, oh, well, I guess if that's true, then I would agree with that system, because I'm not paying, like, I'm already making minimum wage and you're taking half of my paycheck to pay for these programs. Like, okay, so this would really be this would actually cost me less than free healthcare would cost me. And then they start thinking about it and they're like, okay, that's cool. But you don't get there by saying like, oh, you're a crazy commie Democrat and I hate you. You get there by saying like, well, let's have an actual conversation and let me actually hear you out and see how my philosophy can serve your needs.
Okay. So let's say that, hopefully this happens, but you get the 15% in polling numbers, you're allowed on the debate stage, and you're there, and you're up there, and you're giving regular libertarian answers, and you're saying things like fire the IRS and end the Fed. If Fox News is allowed to do it, I don't know, because apparently not anymore right now. But if Jake Tapper's sitting there and he's asking you, how do you plan on doing that? What are you going to tell him?
So basically, I mean, you walk in there and say you're fired. So here's the interesting thing. The income tax is, if we were to, as a very first step, which I don't know if I would not go further than this as a first step, but as a very first step, just say we're going to enforce the income tax constitutionally and legally. Most people who are earning wages from a regular job are not going to be paying income tax. And this kind of goes in line with getting rid of the debt. We have this massive debt that we've accumulated, And one of the reasons that we have so much tax is to pay for the debt, right? To service the debt. And this is how banks work, right? Banks are like, okay, let's see. We want to make a lot of money. How do we make money? Interest. Okay, how do we make more interest? We either jack up the rate or we lend more money. So what do the banks do? They lend more money to the government. And there is no other organization in the world that any bank would lend to. In fact, banks won't lend to certain countries if the country itself is not stable. They lend knowing that they have a steady source of income, right? If you go to get a business loan, they look at your income and they say, okay, you've got that income. We'll lend you money based on that. If you have $22 trillion in debt, there's no bank that's going to lend you $1 unless you're the federal government with a massive army that can say, well, we're going around at gunpoint and collecting money from people to pay for the interest on this debt. And when you look at who that debt is owed to, a lot of it is owed to the Federal Reserve Bank, which is like, how did that happen? You know, the United States government owns the printing press. They buy the ink, they buy the paper, they pay for the labor, they pay for the electricity, they own the building that it's printed in, and somehow that's called borrowing. Like, no, we just need to scratch that debt off the ledger and be like, this is a screwed up game of 3-card Monte where we're doing this exchange with the treasury notes and all this other crap. No, let's just get that off the books. That debt goes away first.
Right. Now
we just start looking at cutting the taxes. And when you start cutting all the, the taxes and the expenses and everything else and all the wasteful spending, you get rid of the wasteful programs that we don't need, like the Department of Education, which I know Democrats hear that and like, oh my God, he wants to cut education. No, I don't want to cut education. That's Department of Education is actually making less money available for your schools.
That's and I mean that's like Department of Education came into existence in 1972, I believe, sometime under Nixon, and since then the cost of the Department of Education has just steadily climbed, while test scores that I don't understand. I mean, yeah, they've dropped / stayed the same over time. It's like, you have done nothing to improve the education of America. And then when you come out with things like Common Core, which more and more states have been rejecting recently, all you're doing is dumbing down America. I understand that is actually, I personally believe, I think that's actually part of the plan, because if you get them dumb enough, they're just going to believe government. And
right.
But
government made me smart because they taught me everything I know.
Right, exactly.
And yeah, and what's interesting about that is, like, even with Common Core, it's like, okay, everyone hates that system, and I see so many reasons why, but I don't reject it just on its face. It's a different way of learning. So maybe it's bad, maybe it's good in some different ways. I'm a math nerd, and I see, like, some of the math things that they're doing, and I'm like, well, this kind of makes sense. Actually, it's just a different way of learning. But what's really interesting, when you talk about test scores and stuff like that, when I was a kid, I had a friend who was in the academic decathlon, right?
Right.
And I was like, I was like never into it, but like I kind of saw how it worked. And it was like, okay, so you have like, the smartest kids in the school, they compete for questions, and then they go to like a regional and a state and a national, and they have this big thing out of it. And it's like, okay, we figure out when you do that, this isn't just a standardized test where every student in the entire country has learned the same thing. And so when you do that, you can say, okay, the smartest kid in the entire country came from this school right here. What is that school doing different that made their students so smart? And even the 10 finalists, you could look at those 10 schools and say, what are these schools doing that they have in common? And that's the market. But when you just blanket across the entire country and say, we're going to introduce this new program, we don't know if it works or not, but we're going to force the entire country to learn it, and everyone's parents are not going to be able to help their kids with their homework because they don't know it.
Right.
And what really pissed me off about Common Core was I was helping a friend's kid out. They sent her home with her math homework, and there's no instructions. So not only do the parents not understand the same, and it was basic multiplication, it was just like they were using different words. They used an array instead of, and which I understood because I'm like, that's in programming. That's like everything.
Right.
So they were using an array, and all it was like, how like when you're first taught multiplication, you just lay out boxes. Okay, 3 times 2, 3 boxes this way, 2 boxes this way, and then you can count them all up. And it was like, fill in the array. And everyone was like, what the fuck does that mean?
Right.
And I'm like, oh, well, they're telling you, 6 by 7 boxes, scratch it in. And that's your times tables, right? But nobody got that because there were no instructions. It was just fill in. And so I see that, and I see that creates frustration. That's going to teach kids to think like, oh, my parents don't know what they're talking about. They don't know basic multiplication, and their parents are like, no, you do it this way. And it's
you
like,
can't
and I think I
change
remember,
math.
my parents doing the same thing, because when I was in school, that was a different system than they had. But yeah, to say like everybody has to learn this way is like, how do you determine which one's better?
Right. And one of the things that I've always told people, and I've almost got this guy who's really far on the left to kind of come over with me on this. I'm so close, but I personally think that education kind of needs to be handled by the localities and the states, because the people in California, we'll say, aren't going to need to know the same things as the people in Oklahoma, because a lot of people in Oklahoma aren't going to have to deal with some of the issues, like some of the business issues that the people in California will. You're going to need a lot more of the FFA, Future Farmers of America. I think that's a thing, where you can focus more on like the business schools or the arts schools or stuff like that in California, because people in LA and San Francisco and San Diego are more likely to go in that kind of a direction, where the people in Oklahoma, and nothing wrong with this, but they're going to be more on the the rural side. They're going to be the more doing the farming and those types of jobs. So that's why I think it's kind of the curriculums need to be kind of set up by the localities and by the states themselves, as opposed to having this standardized federal testing service where you actually get rid of these classes like the home ec and the shops and air conditioning repair or whatever. And instead, we need to go back and get those back into school so kids can find out if these are the career paths they want to take, as opposed to being lied to and told that college is the only way to make a good education.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's so much too, like, there's so much education you can get online, that it's like, we should explore that option, because I totally get what you're saying, and that was a thought that we had when I was in high school. Like, we talked about things like that, but but what if somebody who lives in some rural town in Nebraska, Worms, Nebraska, I'll give a shout out over there, if somebody there says like, well, no, I'm really interested in aerospace, right? Like, that's not something that if the school's focused like that, they might not want to teach. But maybe he's the only student who's interested in even learning that, so they're not going to start a whole program for that, right? But if they gave like free periods to for students to just go and like learn whatever they want online from all these education sources, that would make a huge difference. Because really, we're coming into a world where agriculture is going to be done mostly through automation soon. So a lot of these jobs aren't necessarily going to be a thing, and we shouldn't really be educating ourselves based on jobs. We should be educating ourselves based on interest, because at some point in the future, it's not going to be about that. We're getting there.
Right. No, and I do agree with that. I do agree that we should be educating on interest, which either way that you look at it, it's the federal government just standardizing everything and putting more money into these standardized tests is completely unnecessary. I do agree that we do need to educate on interest. I think having a wider array of arts and the shop home ecs, the auto bodies, having a wider array of those actually helps people get into the field of interest that they're looking for. Like I took a ton of creative writing classes. Any English class I could take where I didn't actually have to read, I took that because all I've ever wanted to do was be a writer. So I took every class I could on how to write, but that was an easy one to do because it kind of fell into the federal government's standardized tests. Right. Because I could learn how to write papers good.
You learn how to write with like trial pleadings and
Right.
get there. Yeah, no, it's, there's definitely, and that's kind of how the government works, right? Like they want to take credit for everything. So, well, we taught you how to do math. So you're smart because of us.
Right. Science somewhat and math, and you can read at an 8th grade level. So
Right.
now you are ready to go out there and face the world. Which, no.
Yeah, and then it's like you get there and it's like, okay, what the fuck am I going to do now?
Right.
I mean, that was like such a big thing for me. Like I went to a community college because I was like, I didn't even bother applying to any major colleges because I was like, there's like, I hear names of colleges, I hear majors, and I'm like, none of those sound interesting to me. Why would I go through that process? And so, I did like some of the liberal arts stuff, like philosophy and some art. Tried some of that. I took some classes on auto repair just because I liked working on cars.
Right.
And it's like I did all this stuff, and like at the end of the day, I was like, okay, well, it's cool. I learned all this cool stuff that like actually I've been able to use at some point in my life. I never made a career out of any of them. The one I decided to make a career out of, I didn't even go to school for. So it's it's really like, it really is like interest. And, I know there are a lot of people out there who are advocating for, what's it called? It's like trade tech schools,
Right.
Learn a trade so you can actually get a job and don't waste your money on like, a $500,000, college so that you can get a degree in something that's not going to make you any money. I totally agree with that stuff, but it's like everybody's path is different. And, we don't all decide what we want to do with our lives by the time we're 18, and that's totally fine, and we shouldn't be pressured into that.
Yeah, I mean, they're back in the 90s. I believe it was 99, may have been 98. A song came out called "Sunscreen" by Boz Luhrmann, and in it he said some of the most interesting people I know did not know what they wanted to be when they were 40.
Yep.
And I
remember that song.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
I listened to that one a million times. That was a good one.
Yeah. To the graduating class of 1999, wear sunscreen.
And that was my class.
Yeah, I remember that song, and I listened to it because somebody lied to me and told me that it was a graduation speech that was written by Kurt Vonnegut, and that they had put to music. And so I listened to it a lot and memorized it because I love Kurt Vonnegut. And then I found out that person was a liar. And now I have the entire song of Sunscreen locked away in here. So that way I can always pull it.
I got to ask, since I don't hear the name Kurt Vonnegut too often anymore, have you seen a movie called Breakfast of Champions? I'm sure there was a book too.
It was a book, yeah.
It was by I think it was written by his son, though. But
no, it was written by him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, it was written by him. The Breakfast of Champions is a martini. Is it the one with Nick Nolte and Bruce Willis?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have seen it.
And who else was in that? Yeah, it was just an awesome movie.
Yeah, no, it's a great movie. It's a great movie. And I'm going to be that pretentious douche, and I'm going to go, nothing compared to the book. That's actually one of my top 5 favorite books ever written. I've read it like 6 times.
Really?
Yeah,
all right.
I love
I'm gonna
that.
have to. I'm not big on reading. Even when I read like informational type books, like it's always the audiobook, just because like I don't know, it's ADD or something. I can't sit down and read a book like that. But,
no, I
might
definitely
check that one
understand.
out.
No, it's a great book. It's a fantastic read. Literally one of the greatest books ever written, in my personal opinion. The Breakfast of Champions is a dry martini. Just so you know, I'm going to spoil that for you. It's about halfway through. So one of your other platforms is civil asset forfeiture, which we've been hearing a lot about in the news recently. And I didn't actually read under that because I assumed I knew what your position was slightly. But I'm assuming we're trying to get rid of that.
I missed that. Which one is that?
Civil asset forfeiture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I mean, I guess we could civilly forfeit some of the government's assets back to the people.
That's fair.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely something we need to get rid of. That's like, I mean, that's like, that's just a huge violation of due process. To even think to all the people who say that'll never happen in this country, we've got the Constitution. No, that's
definitely
one
happening.
of those things that's happening. Yeah.
So recently there was I believe it was I don't think it was Supreme Court. I think it was just a federal court ruled against civil asset forfeiture, and it was a huge win. A guy got arrested. He had heroin on him, and the rules for civil asset forfeiture means that anything that you procured from the money you made while doing the illegal thing, the government got to take. So they took his like Escalade or something, which he had before any of this even started, and the court ruled that no, you have to give him his car back, and huge win, in my personal opinion.
This was February 22nd, 2019, Supreme Court.
Supreme Court. Okay. I wasn't sure if it was Supreme Court or federal.
So that's really interesting. I want to see the details on this, but what's been difficult for most people is, they do have the burden of proof, right? But that's only if you get to trial. And where a lot of people have been stuck is the government takes the property. They don't ever file any charges, and in order to get the property back, you have to sue them. And if you sue them, then it becomes a civil case versus a criminal case, and the rules might change on that. I don't know exactly how that works with civil asset forfeiture, but you're exactly right. Like if it has to be something from a crime and they have no evidence to support that, then you should be able to get that back. But yeah, I mean, it's, we know it's insane. There have been people where they have like no probable cause at all. Just somebody who's on his way to buy a boat, a used boat, cash. He takes cash instead of a cashier's check or a personal check. I've personally traveled with $10,000 or more on myself before. I know most people hear that and they're like, nobody should be traveling with that much money. It's really not that out of the ordinary. I mean, for a lot of people it is, but it's, for a lot of people it's not. So that shouldn't be a crime.
Right. Absolutely. Real quick from the comments, John Reisbeck Lopez, Bula, thanks for watching from Oregon. Love it when a Kava drinker watches my show. I really do. Now, personally, and a lot of people are going to find that this is going to be the most controversial thing that you actually are coming out for. But I personally think it's the most important.
I know what it is.
Yeah, I know you do. We really need to just legalize pineapple pizza, and everybody just needs to stop hating on it.
Absolutely. It's sad that the bigotry against this pizza is dividing our nation in half. It really is.
It really is. Like, I enjoy a little salty and savory at the same time. Like, there is nothing wrong with that. The sweet and savory, the sweet and salty, it's a perfect mix. And like you were saying earlier, science has proven it's the superior pizza.
Absolutely. So what's really interesting about this is, and I like to say to anybody who disagrees with me, I may not agree with what you put on your pizza, but I will fight to the death your right to eat it. It's really, it's not the government's job to tell us what we can or can't put in our body. I mean, if we're not harming anybody, we're not stealing from them to be able to afford the pineapple pizza, it's really none of their concern. We should be able to eat pineapple pizza in the privacy of our own homes. Right.
We should be able to eat pineapple pizza basically anywhere, really, as long as it's not invading on somebody else's personal property or space.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't have that smell that kind of wafts across, like, some foods you might get that might disturb the whole restaurant, like one of those really stale cheeses that I don't know why people like those, but those, yeah.
Very true. Very true. It's not something that it's not an offensive. It is not an offensive pizza to order out at a restaurant. Instead, it is it is a lighthearted and tasty dinner that you can share between friends and have a totally island feel while drinking kava.
Absolutely.
We've apparently triggered Jacob LaBelle, who is one of our regular followers here at the Muddied Waters of Freedom. But yeah, I mean, you have the right to put whatever you want inside your body, is my personal opinion on it. I don't care if that's alcohol. I don't care if that's smoking weed. I don't care if that's cocaine or heroin. Knock yourself out. As long as you are not stealing from anybody, hurting anybody, or doing anything along those lines, put whatever you want in your body.
Absolutely.
Right. So what's the next steps here for your campaign? I know that the convention isn't until next May.
That's the big convention.
Right.
There are a lot of
that's where
conventions.
they pick.
Yeah. So there are a lot of conventions coming up along the way. There's a few this year, 2019, that I'm going to, and basically just going out and meeting with some of the possible future delegates. And while I'm there, recruiting more volunteers. We've got some awesome print materials that we're working on that are going to be going out all over the place. And actually, let me answer this because it's really kind of the same stuff. The question came up, well, why would you even run for a third party? Because you're never going to win. I hear that all the time.
Right.
The reality is, the government that we have and the representation that we have is a reflection of what people want. Like it or not, people want it. There are millions of people out there who want democratic socialism or whatever you want to call it. There are plenty of people out there who want a border wall and Trump ruling with an iron fist. Like it or not, that's there. And so what I see is, if ever anybody is going to get elected who's not either one of those, we need to change the conversation that we're having in this country. And so what I'm doing with this campaign is changing that conversation. And in order for me to win, I can't just go to those people and say, hey, I'm going to pander to you and you're going to vote for me and I'm going to win. That's not going to happen because realistically, if people still want some authoritarian to come in there and say, this is what's going to go down and this is how it's going to work and this is what everybody's going to get out of it, and we're going to steal in order to make it happen. If that's the mentality that people have, they're never going to elect somebody like me. So we need to change that. And we need to change that not just so that I can get elected, but because if we don't, things are going to get really bad. I mean, they're already getting pretty bad, pretty ugly. People are fighting each other in the streets, which is insane to me.
Like literally fighting each other in the streets.
Literally. Yeah. Oh, you're wearing a red hat. I'm going to kick your ass.
Right.
It's insane. Like, we're supposed to be a civilized society. Apparently that's what we're paying our taxes for. Right. So we can live in a civilized society. And we need to change that conversation. We need to stop thinking I need to take down the other side in order for me to get what I want. That's not the way it has to be. We can all get what we want if we stop trying to put down the other side to get there. And so that's really the focus of this campaign. And in doing that, we are going to reach a lot of people. And whether we get elected or not, whether we win, it's going to be a win, because the win is not the big win. The win is in changing the conversation and getting people to actually understand some of these concepts and start sharing it with their friends. And that's going to change, whether or not I win, that's going to change what people are demanding from their congressmen and senators and whoever the next president is. So that, I think, is even more important than just getting into the office and doing these things I say that I'm going to do. If people are demanding that, it's going to happen.
And a lot of our viewers may not know, and I actually learned this during the 2016 race. There's no primary vote for the Libertarian Party. The Libertarian presidential nominee and vice presidential nominee are picked by the delegates.
Yep.
And a lot of people didn't know that. And I found that out. I guess I knew that in 2016, so I found it out a couple years before that. But right. A lot of people were really upset when they went to go vote on a primary day in their state and they couldn't vote.
Right. Yeah, it's not how it works at all, and it's not really publicized that way, which is interesting. But they have no reason to even mention our names, and maybe that's why we don't get a public vote. But, you know, the reality is the other parties actually do kind of work in the same way. Your votes go to, like, it's kind of like the Electoral College all over again. You go to a polling place and you vote, but then those votes are used to pick delegates. And, you know, we saw, I think Ron Paul got screwed over that way in some states where the vote said, you know, we need a delegate who's going to vote for Ron Paul, but the delegates who are actually selected were not Ron Paul delegates. And, you know, and of course, calling someone a Ron Paul delegate doesn't really make them that, because they still go to the national convention and then cast the vote, and they can change their vote,
right,
which is just like the Electoral College. So, yeah, this whole thing, like it's, you know, politics and what we think of it, especially like if all you know is the ballot box, like there's this whole thing going on behind the scenes that really makes those ballots, you know, it can make those ballots totally worthless. And, you know, and I totally get it that, you know, if it's boring and you don't want to pay attention to it. I mean, that was my position for the longest time. Like, who cares? Like some asshole's going to get elected. He's going to make some laws. I'm still not going to be able to, you know, buy alcohol until I'm 21. I'm still not going to be able to do this and that. And, you know, all these things. And that was my opinion. But, you know, I had a friend today. He sent me an invoice. He's like, man, I can't believe this. And he bought something online from another state. And normally you don't pay sales tax on it, but they just finally, you know, got the sales tax through where you have to pay sales tax on interstate purchases now online. And so he was like, man, I have to pay like an extra $300 on top of the original cost just in tax. What's up with that? And I'm like, man, this is why I say, you know, if you don't, it doesn't matter if you don't pay attention to politics. Politics are paying attention to you. They know you're spending money, that you're not paying tax on it. And they've been trying to get that tax passed for like, 20 years now?
Yeah, basically since the advent of online commerce.
Exactly. And so now, we're leveling the playing field for all of the brick and mortar stores that have to pay. So it's like, why don't you just stop charging them sales tax, and then it'll be fair for everybody?
Right. I mean,
it's
stop charging them sales tax, or allow them, you know, get rid of some regulation that makes it impossible for them to survive without, you know, charging so much. You know,
absolutely,
like minimum wage. Just toss minimum wage right out the window. But which I personally agree with. But that's a completely different conversation. Is your tie real? Because you always get that taxation is theft so perfect at the top.
Yeah, it's that's real, man. It's I actually do this. I don't know how you tie them, but I learned to tie them where, like, when you put it first around your neck, you actually put it upside down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was like, because everyone else I see do it, they do it upside out.
Right. No. Yeah, upside down, and then you do like the double Windsor and come through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do a one, because I think this one's a little bit shorter.
Right.
So and I'm tall.
I was looking at that online today, and I was like, that's got to be fake.
It's just a clip-on.
Yeah, I was like, that's got to be fake, because that taxation is theft is so perfect across the knot there that I figured that it wasn't real. So if any of our viewers, listeners, what have you, would like to check you out, to donate to you, to follow you, where would they go?
Absolutely. Go to Behrman2020.com. That's BEHRMAN 2020.com, and legalizepineapplepizza.org, of course. You can go there. You can donate. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All kinds of different names, but just look up Dan Behrman, or I think if you type in taxation is theft, I might come up for a few of them. And then, of course, I've got Taxation is Theft, the brand, on each of those platforms, as well as YouTube. YouTube is the awesome one, where I actually got youtube.com/taxation is theft. Some of the others are a variation. Facebook is /taxation is theft too. And Twitter is taxation es theft, taxation s theft. Because the other one was taken, even though it's like people squat on these names and they're not using them for anything. So that kind of sucks. But and I've got taxationistheft.info with a podcast and a blog on there, which has some really awesome information about taxation being theft. And of course, taxationistheft.cards, where you can go get some awesome merch.
Basically, any way you can think to spell taxation is theft with any sort of ending after it, .com, .org, .info.
Yeah, and if you find one that I haven't found yet, let me know, because I want it.
Right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I'm gonna do my part and play the outro music. But if you will hang out for a few minutes afterwards, so
Absolutely.
Cool, excellent. So everybody else, remember you can follow us on Facebook.com/Muddied Waters of Freedom. You can follow us on Twitter at @Muddied_Waters, on Instagram at Muddied Waters of Freedom, or on YouTube at YouTube.com/Muddied Waters Media. And you can find this and every other episode of Muddied Waters Media at muddiedwatersoffreedom.com. Now, tomorrow is Friday, so Mr. Murica, the Bearded Truth, closes out the week for us, and then you get 2 days off before he comes back on Monday to give you a recap of everything that happened on the weekend, and then all new episodes of everything next week. So tune in. Oops, I forgot to do the music. Let me continue to talk for a little bit longer. So be sure to tune in all next week for all new episodes of everything. And, just have yourself a fantastic weekend and make sure that you watch Jason's show tomorrow. Mr. Murica, the Bearded Truth should be starting about 8 o'clock. Have a great weekend, guys. Thanks.
I am swinging from a 7-story window, throwing parties in a 10-by-7 cell. It's astounding the lengths I'll go to convince the whole damn world I don't need anybody's help. Yeah, I am waving while I drown. Don't bother swimming out to save me, I will only drag you down. I'll try to use your body as a life raft, 'cause if there's room enough for one, there must be room enough for two. I'll sail the good ship you into the sunset, sipping on savory water till my liver turns blue. Sha-na-na, sha-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Is broadcast in the evening news. I will be relieved. La, 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 I am waving while I drown. Don't bother swimming out to save me, I will only drag you down. I'm waving while I drown. Don't bother swimming out to save me, I will only drag you down. La, 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 singing, hey, hey, alright, yeah, I wrote that one myself. It's astounding the lengths I'll go to convince the whole damn world I don't need anybody's help.